You are listening to the Two-Tone Crew. Hello and welcome. We are the official podcast of TitansReport.com, a fan website for the 5-3 Tennessee Titans. I'm one of your hosts, John Boy, and just one other co-host tonight, Jamal. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I am Jamal, and you are welcome.
Scotty couldn't make it tonight, so you weren't with us on the last episode, so now we'll get your thoughts on the past couple of weeks here, now that we're at the midway point. And then, of course, we didn't have any podcasts over the bye, but lots to talk about this week. Titans 5-3 right there at the midpoint of their season, and coming off another close victory, 23-20 over the Baltimore Ravens. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome to the show. We break down the latest Titans game. Yeah.
Before you go any further, I'll keep it clean because you're a kind man, and I know that that's what you prefer. So I'll just say, F the Ravens. Screw the Ravens.
Always good to beat the Ravens.
I hate the Ravens.
Yep.
This game was approaching, it was just like I was having flashbacks to how much I used to just completely despise them. And I realized I think I hate them more than the Colts. I really hate the Jags still.
It's like up just there.
A visceral hate. So F the Ravens.
I mean, it goes back to the whole Billick F the Titans thing, right? I mean, that they had some battles back then. And I mean, I'll never forget the playoff game when it was, I mean, Kerry Collins was leading the team and we were dominant behind CJ and a defense that was just, I mean, playing really well. And then they took CJ out of the game, which many speculate to be intentionally, and we all know what happened from there. But yeah, I mean, the Ravens are absolutely a hated rival. Always good to get a win over them. And we'll talk a lot about that. But yeah, for those of you listening for the first time, welcome to the show. We talk about the latest Titans game, preview the upcoming game, and also just give kind of an overall look at the status of the season, especially here at the midway point. It's good to kind of take a step back and evaluate the team on expectations of what we had going in and kind of where they're at now. So, I mean, yeah, let's start off with this game against the Ravens, 23-20, the final score. I would actually argue, I think you'd probably agree, Titans dominated much more than the score indicates, especially defensively. I mean, the Ravens weren't doing a whole lot. Our offense just had a little trouble scoring. I mean, they were moving the ball well. And then after the pick, they kind of woke back up and got that late touchdown to kind of hold off the Ravens and seal the deal. And then, of course, recover the onside kick at the end. But yeah, I think it was more lopsided than the score would indicate. And there was never really a moment where you felt the game was in jeopardy until that moment at near the end when Mariota threw the interception and then the Ravens came down and scored immediately after that. And then we answered right away. So you were feeling pretty good. But yeah, I mean, this was a good way to come out of the bye. You know, it's at home. Titans really needed a win here. And this one, it's weird because after the Cleveland game, team you expect the Titans should have blown off. They should have blown them off the field. Yet they didn't do that. So there was a lot of complaints among fans. And I think Malarkey even got some of this from the beat writers, Kaharski especially, of, is this really a good win, you know, against Cleveland? Even though the Ravens was a 3-point win, I think you can absolutely say it's a good win, at least for me.
Yeah, I would say the second half, the offense really tailed off. And even in the first half.
That third quarter.
Yeah, that third quarter was just nasty. And, you know, in the first half, I think score-wise, it looked better than it was because they had the short fields where they were getting set up. And they were knocking it in, right? So it's like the defense teased them up and then they hit a home run. You can't really complain that they hit home runs, right? Like we were actually scoring once we got into the red zone. It was positive. And then that third quarter hit and it was like really the whole second half, we had like one drive. It's a hot and cold team. And I think we continued to see that, especially on offense. On defense, I think they dominated, and then you start going into playing a little bit prevent and trying to run out the clock, and you change the way you play on defense, and they scored some points in the fourth quarter. But uneven performance from the offense. But overall, I felt like we were in control of that game from start to finish.
Yeah. I think you touched on it a little bit there, but one of the underrated aspects of the defense this year has been the rushing defense.
Mm-hmm.
The Ravens coming in, they had kind of found something with their running game, and yet the Titans did a very good job against the rushing attack, as they've done all year. I mean, Collins had 43 yards. He averaged 3.3 yards per carry, and then Javorius Allen, 7 carries, 21 yards. They didn't do much at all on the ground. Unfortunately, neither did we, which more on that in a second. But yeah, I mean, defensively, it's one thing to play well against teams like the Dolphins and teams like the Browns and the Colts even, which there were moments, in that game, up and down in that game. But against the Ravens, I think this is a much better I don't know that the offense of the Ravens is some offensive juggernaut, but obviously you feel much better about the defense playing this well against the Ravens as you do opposed to a team like the Browns, when they just really do not have much at all. And guy we got to talk about at some point, might as well go ahead and do it now, is Kevin Byard. I mean, he's really generating a lot of national buzz this week because he's currently leading the NFL in interceptions. And what I've seen is people kind of going back now and breaking down all these interceptions. I think he's got 6, and 5 of them have come in the past 2 games. So he had just this sudden surge, but people have went back and kind of broken them down. And at first it might look like, oh, that was kind of fluky, that was a tip. And then he just happened to be there in the right place. But that component right there, being in the right place, is really kind of a key thing. I don't know if you saw some of the breakdowns just showing how he, especially the first one this week when Logan Ryan got the tip, his man was actually the tight end. So his first responsibility was to make sure that he was, in fact, staying in to block. And once he kind of decided that was the case, that the Ravens tight end was staying in to block, he sort of pulls back and then just makes a great play on a tipped ball. And then the other one, I mean, he looked like a wide receiver out there running and making that catch. But you got to love what you're seeing out of him right now. I mean, especially only in his second year.
Right. Well, I think that last part is one of the keys for me, because last year we started hearing some really early hype on him, and he didn't have a bad rookie year, but he didn't see the field quite as much as I think the preseason hype led me to expect. And then coming into this year, there was a good bit of hype, and there were even some articles about like how the defense was being designed to feature him in various ways. And then early in the season, it was just kind of, he felt it was like quiet. And you were a little worried. I was a little worried, I should say, that he wasn't taking the step you would expect. And I don't know if it's just, the Homer fan in me, but how many times have we had a guy who does decently well as a rookie and we start getting excited and they just never take that next step? I feel like having him take that next step, having a player who is actually developing, just like, oh, he has some potential, but no, oh, he's really good. It is an amazing thing to see. I mean, at this point, granted that I don't trust beat writers or anyone to vote appropriately, but he's playing at an all-pro level. And
I was going to say
that is so
huge. He's been generating some discussion there. And I mean, at the midway point, that's kind of the point of the season when you really start to hone in on those things. Okay, we've seen half the season who are the mid-season MVPs, all pros, things like that. And yeah, he's definitely generating some buzz. I've seen him on a number of lists. And at first I wonder, is it just the interceptions? Is that the one thing that's catching people's eye? And I think it is, but I think once they come and really look at him, they're seeing that he's actually, I mean, even when he's not making interceptions, he's got a lot of passes defense this year. I had the stat earlier and I don't have it pulled up right now, but he's got quite a few passes defensed as well. So, I mean, he's making a lot of plays on the ball. And, he may have even had another one this week, but both he and Adoree kind of got a piece of the ball right at the same time in that pass in the end zone. But he was in position to make that one as well. Yeah, you got to love what you're seeing out of him right now. And, you talk about how long has it been since we've seen a player do this in his second year. What I thought you were about to say is how long has it been since the Titans have had a true game changer in the secondary who can really just alter game plans to where you almost have to avoid throwing near this guy. And I'm not saying he's at that level yet, but if he keeps this up, I mean, he's got 6 interceptions, and they said no one, I think the record is no one has ever had 7 interceptions in 3 games. So he'd have to get 2 more this week, but he would tie a number of NFL records this week if he gets 1 pick. But at some point, I mean, he's going to actively start being brought up in those defensive or in those offensive meeting rooms of opposing teams of, you got to watch out for this guy. You know, you got to try and avoid him. And I don't know. I mean, maybe Pac-Man when he was playing really well is the last time we've had that. Even in the days of Finnegan and when McCourty were solid players, they weren't really guys you had to avoid. I mean, Samari Rolle was probably a guy that you had to really keep an eye on as well. But Byard, he's right there in that conversation for potential, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about safeties, at least for me as an observer, is a lot of times you don't really know what their responsibility is, right? Sometimes it's like you see a cornerback get burned and you're like, wow, that cornerback got burned. But then after the game, the coaches and people are talking about it and you see the breakdown of the film and everybody says, no, actually, that was the safety's responsibility. I have seen basically almost none of that, you know, where there's just miscommunications or misreading a play. He gets himself out of position. And I think that's why, for me, when it comes to, is it just the turnovers? No, I mean, to a certain extent, it's the fact that you're not hearing about big mistakes otherwise. It's the fact that, you know, you're not having huge pass plays against this defense. And then you're going back and looking and you're saying, yeah, safety was out of position. Right. So there's a lot to it, but no, I don't. I think even with Pac-Man, he was more electric than shutdown. And true. Even more a returner than truly as a shutdown corner. But it's nice. And the interesting guy we should talk about is Woodyard. He might even be playing better football. Like I never would have expected this from him. Right?
I was going to talk about surprises so far at the midway point. He's got to be up at the top. Yeah. I mean, he actually restructured his contract in the offseason. He took a pay cut. It's an extension, so they added more years, but he actually took a pay cut, and he's playing the best football of his career. I don't know if you saw the post. I did kind of a little breakdown today of just kind of a mid-season review of the team. And I gave him my defensive MVP for the team, despite what Byard has done. Right. I think Byard has kind of come on throughout the year, whereas Woodyard has been like this from day one of this season. He's been playing at, I think you could even say, an elite level all year. He's been playing like that.
Well, tackles are a hard thing to truly,
especially.
Yeah. Tackles are a hard thing to truly trust because sometimes you're seeing a guy make a ton of tackles, but, you know, they're later after a number of yards have been gained, and you know it's more of a catch-up tackle than really stopping the opponent. But he's on pace for like 220 tackles or something. It's insane. He had 20 tackles against the Ravens. 20. What?
Yeah,
I would have said he's a jag, right? Like he is just a guy on a defense, and you're hoping that he doesn't become a problem. But he's not an answer. He's not somebody who's going to really step up and make these big plays. He's making huge plays in multiple games. I can think of big plays that he's made.
The fourth down
is the guy
twice.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly think it, especially the last couple of games when we've had these close victories against Cleveland and Baltimore, if we didn't have such superb defensive play, and the opponent's offense is not that great, but the defense is stepping up. Like, we had 5 turnovers in the last 2 games. Without those, did we win those games? They're very different games without those.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If we don't get those fourth down stops, those are very different games. And I feel it's kind of a transition, but I feel very excited to be at 5-3, given how overall my feeling on how the team has performed is almost like an underperformance.
Yeah,
but the fact that we have five
feeling.
wins, the fact that we have 5 wins, we managed to eke these out. Like at the end of the day, people always say you are what your record is. Yes, but when you're projecting, you want to have better wins so that you say, see, we're really, really good. We can beat those other teams. We didn't just kind of luck into these. But sides of the coin for me, when I'm looking at this season so far, it's like we're kind of underperforming. There's some exciting things happening more on the defense with Byard and Woodyard, and the run defense. I think I saw a stat that we've gone like 15 games or something without allowing a 100-yard rusher.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that too. Something like that.
So there's like some good things happening, but overall, I feel kind of negative. Well, okay, so if I'm projecting how we're playing right now, the rest of the season makes me a little nervous. But the fact of the matter is we have players who are underperforming. It's not like you're just projecting it and saying, oh, I hope they can grow into this. No, our offensive line, you expect better. Our passing game, you expect better. Our rushing game, you expect better. And we have seen it. And so it's easy to imagine, okay, if those things get right over the course of the rest of the season, we're going to be peaking at the right time. Some teams, they'll peak early. Like, think of the Vikings last year. Didn't they start like 6-0 and then they just fell apart? Some of that's injuries, but some of it is, teams adjust throughout the year. And there's like this mercurial aspect of how a team is performing and just like getting everything right.
I mean, you live in you live in Wisconsin. So remember Green Bay last year when we played them? I mean, that was like rock bottom. It was like these guys are done, and then all of a sudden, near the end of the year, here they come again, and they made a really good run in the playoffs and play really good football. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's such a weird feeling to be at 5-3 and to kind of almost feel not disappointment, but just like we're nowhere near playing as well as we could be. I mean, you look at last year. I've kind of looked back a little bit today as I was writing up this midseason report. But you look back at this point last year, we were 4-4, and we had what was, a really tough slate games in the latter half of the year. We saw teams like the Packers on there and the Broncos and the Chiefs, and the Titans go and win all those games. And then, of course, we know they lost to the Jags, which pretty much ended their playoff hopes. But yeah, I mean, they're at a point right now where you're not panicking too much about the performances because of the fact that I think we've seen enough glimpses, enough in games against Seattle, enough in games against Jacksonville, and even games against Indy and this week against Baltimore. We saw enough from the offense to say, okay, they can get there. And I think we've certainly seen enough from the defense. The question there is just, can they keep doing it against better quality opponents as we start to face guys like the Steelers? And even though the Bengals, as we're going to talk about, are terrible on offense this year, they still have some quality players. And then who would have thought, but the Rams are going to come, I guess we're going to the Rams this year, I believe. And they've certainly got, actually, no, the Rams come to town. Okay, just double checking on that. The Rams do play in Tennessee this year. But yeah, I mean, they're coming with a high-flying offense. So yeah, it's such a great spot to be in. I mean, we're tied for the division lead, and we hold the tiebreaker over the Jags right now, and we're in a good spot heading down to the second half of the season. One more thing, though, on Woodyard. I was going to say, I was checking while you were talking about him. I was looking up. He's 31 and in his 10th year. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a guy play better in his 10th season than he has at any point before it. I mean, remind me, was he benched last year? Because I'm looking, it's showing in 2016, he played in all 16 games, yet he only started 10 games. Had to be benched at some point to where they started taking him out and not playing him as much.
No, I mean, potentially that's just based on the alignment at the beginning of, like, the first down is what determines starter, right? So potentially,
because this year
he's first down, but
he's listed as started in all 8 games, so
he could have.
I can't. I
definitely don't remember.
We'll have to double check on that. For some reason, I think it was kind of like he was in and out, and it was one of those things where some weeks they had him playing more and other weeks they didn't, but we'll have to look back and check on that. But regardless, I mean, the resurgence, I don't even know if you'd call it a resurgence, but just in his 10th year,
the emergence.
Yeah.
So, John, if I wasn't a fan of the Titans, I would be saying this, so I feel like I need to say it, but he's playing so well that it's the exact type of profile for someone who ends up getting popped for roids, right? Like next year, he's going to get suspended.
I hadn't even thought of that, but it's a great point.
That's how well he's playing, is that if it came out he was on performance-enhancing drugs, I'd say, well, there you go. That's why he was playing so well. It's a nice compliment to be playing so well, that somebody would say that. So I don't feel like I'm being negative when I say that, but
no, dude, listen to this. So you were talking about his tackles. When he first came, 2014 was his first year with the team. He started all 16 games. He had 94 total tackles for the year.
Well, he's
in 2015,
got that beat, right?
87 tackles. In 2016, he had 57 tackles. Now, through 8 games, and this is NFL.com, they show him with 71 total tackles right now.
Yeah, that's
impressive. That's already destroyed last year, and he's pretty close to surpassing his 2015 total. And as long as he stays healthy, is almost certainly going to have his best year in terms of tackles. He's got 2 sacks. He's got 3 passes defensed. It's just, yeah, it's it defies everything you would have expected for him coming into the year. But yeah, so let's talk about the offense in this game, because you touched on them a little bit, and they made enough plays through the air, especially. But this rushing game, we're going to have to figure out. I mean, that's going to be a major focus, I think, of the second half of the season. They've got to figure out what's going on here, because right now it's not cutting it. And we were talking before we actually hit record that somehow they're still ranked 10th in the league. And so we kind of went back and looked, and it's really skewed by a couple of games when we had leads. So you look at the Jags game, you look at the Seahawks game, and you look at the Colts game to some extent. Those are our best rushing games. We had 179 against the Jags, 195 against the Seahawks, 168 against the Colts. We do not eclipse 100 yards in any other game this year.
Mm-hmm. And that's with a rushing QB at times when he wasn't injured. But
right,
despite having a rushing QB, we can't even get as a team over 100 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, and even, I mean, even as I think both you and I want the team to kind of go towards more of a passing offense, but even for people who want that, the running game has to get better, even if you want that. I mean, we just can't sustain the way it's performing right now. I mean, I don't know what's the most concerning part about it, but for me, what really stands out is all these short yardage situations where with our offensive line and with a back like Derrick Henry, we should be able to get 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 when you're at the goal line, and they're not being able to get these. They've not picked these up, and I'm sure it's a number of factors. I'm sure there's a lot of things going on in terms of blocking, in terms of the actual running backs. We know Murray hasn't been healthy. Henry's still young, and there's some legitimate questions about can he be a guy that can just pop in there for a couple plays and succeed, or does he need more carries to kind of get going as a game goes on? It remains to be seen, but right now I rate that as by far my biggest kind of concern looking at the final 8 games of the year.
Well, yeah, because that's what we're built to do. I mean, some people keep saying, well, we just need to start passing more. We need to run. I think we could do more, right? But like, it seems like there's a sense from some people that we can just like flip some switch and become a passing offense, or flip some switch and we're going to run a ton of up tempo. Any changes in a season are generally iterative, right? So it's like, we're going to do a little bit more of this. Hey, we found some plays that work, or some looks that seem to throw, whatever. It's not going to be, hey, now we're going to start running 5 wide. It's just not going to happen. Team that was built around the run, and we have to be able to do it. We have to be able to sustain drives, to get in good downs and distances, and to put the passing game in good situations where then when we're passing, we're not having to pick up 10 yards on third down, even 7 yards. That's not what this offense is designed to do. And right now we're failing at it. And I've seen some stats that suggest a lot of it is the offensive line. And that's such a bummer. Like I've seen stats when, I can't remember what game it was, but Derrick Henry had
where they get hit behind the line of
like Derrick
scrimmage,
Henry
right?
in one game had like 13 rushes for 13 yards, but he averaged something like 2.5 yards after contact. Well, that is crazy. There was a game where I saw those stats and it was like, really? Okay, well that clarifies the problem, at least in that game. For me, there's also an element of, it seems like I still just feel like our game flow, I don't like the rhythm of our play calling at times, where it just feels like this is just, to a certain sense, predictable. And it's not run, pass, because if you go back and you look at sets of downs, it's rare to see run, pass. But it just doesn't feel like it has a rhythm. And we went through that at times last year where it felt out of rhythm. And then there were times where it felt like they were really in a good flow. And I'm really kind of hoping they get in a good flow, because I don't think is, or I guess I should say DeMarco Murray is going to be truly healthy this year and out there doing what he did last year. I think what you've seen this year is the type of back he's going to be. And what you've seen this year is the amount of usage we're going to give him. It's not going to change. And so I don't think that the running backs are going to suddenly step their game up and start producing more. It's got to be through scheming, play calling, and offensive line. Because right. I don't think you're going to get more out of your running backs, personally.
Yeah, and I thought if you look at this Ravens game in particular, there was a series of plays in the second half that really hurt them. I think that play in the third quarter when I think it was Klein and Mariota, he stepped on his foot and he kind of got tripped up, and then Marcus tried to get up and ended up losing something like 13 yards, and it was on first down. And then Marcus makes a great play after that, great pass to get him in a convertible third down, and then Richard drops the third down pass, which that little things like that, and then the interception. I'm not really sure what Marcus was thinking on that play. I haven't had a chance to read if he was asked specifically, but other than that, I thought Marcus had a really solid game, especially against a good pass defense in the Ravens. And you look at the throw to Delanie Walker, man, after the interception, when they came back and we needed a big play, that was just a great play and great throw, and Delanie Walker doing what he always does, making a great catch. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this offense progresses as the second half of the season gets rolling. I mean, we think that we've got Corey Davis back healthy now. He played a little bit this game. Actually played a lot. He played more than expected. And
they're saying he's going to play even more going forward too. I think I saw that he played 75% of the snaps this last game, and they're saying he'll play more. Well, there's only so much more you can get from there. But
right.
I thought it was interesting because some people expected him to get all these receiving yards, and that's wishful thinking in his first game back for sure. And in this game, you saw the difference he made. I don't think it's a coincidence that suddenly Rishard Matthews is producing in the passing game when Chris Davis is out there drawing attention, right? Like, I don't think that's a coincidence at all. Yeah, I think that he changes the nature of our offense, and that's where you start looking at it. And if we can start producing better in the passing game, take a little focus defensively away from our rushing attack, maybe things start to balance out a little bit more here. I think that's what I'm hoping for.
Yep. And I think one thing that I think we all expected Decker's numbers to go down with Davis back in the lineup, but Taywan Taylor was almost reduced to complete irrelevance in this game. I think he had something like 7 snaps. So I don't know that I expected that. I almost expected more of an even split between he and Decker, with, of course, Richard and Corey getting the bulk of time at receiver. So that's a little surprising. I was hoping after the bye maybe they would feel a little more confident in him getting out there. But the play that Decker made, I mean, that's one of those veteran savvy moves that maybe Taywan Taylor doesn't make that play. And if you haven't heard them break down that play, it was the touchdown pass to Decker. It was the play we've seen him run, or at least it was similar to the play we've seen him run a number of times, where Mariota rolls right and then throws back to the tight end. This one, they said his first read was actually to Richard on the right. He saw that he wasn't open. Then he was supposed to go back to the left to Jonnu Smith, and Jonnu Smith, I don't know if he just, they said he got caught up, but if you go back and watch it, it looks like he just kind of got confused. So Decker sort of picks up on that. He goes out to the left instead, and it's a wide open touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you got a chance to listen last week, but Scotty made a great point, I thought, with, I think the general consensus is we've all been pretty disappointed with Decker, but he's been playing a role that really that's not why they signed him. The first 8 games, I mean, he really wasn't intended to be the number 2 guy. I mean, Corey Davis was supposed to come in and be hopefully the number 1, with Richard going to number 2, and then Decker was going to be the red zone, the slot guy. So I don't know that we can, be too angry with him, but, he has had some drops. But so hopefully with Davis getting more integrated in the offense now, they'll be able to actually get Decker playing the role that they wanted him to from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. But I honestly think the whole offense is going to balance out. Number one, they're going to find some solutions in the running game. They're going to start finding a little bit more balance. I do think there's something to be said. We talked about it a number of times last year when we were talking about the running back split, but DeMarco Murray is a back who I think more than other backs tends to do well getting the full load. Probably is true for Derrick Henry. And so with them splitting, if nothing else, there's just a little bit of a feel for that, a little bit of a familiarity that they need to redevelop and just work themselves into that role. And then I think Corey Davis, Marcus getting healthy, they can get back to, because I was looking back at it, man, we only had 3 games where he was completely healthy the whole game, right? Because he got injured against Houston. That's game 4.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Marcus.
Davis?
No, Marcus.
Oh, Marcus, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't even really been able to run because they're already talking about doing it more. And I think that you saw it in the first couple of games where that, the read options, just getting him more involved, moving around, being active, taking more carries, the way that they want to use him, and he's really good at it. It scares me. I hate it. I like the effect of it, but I just get nervous it's going to end for good.
Yeah.
When he dies on the field after some monster hit or something. But
hey, AFC South QBs right now do not have a good good thing going this year.
Thank God. But regardless, I mean, we haven't been able to even run, set aside the fact that Corey Davis has been injured. Even without him, we haven't been running the offense we really are designed to run, that they practiced all camp, I'm sure. So I really think that this offense is going to take a big step in the second half.
I feel the same way. I hope we're right. Let's kind of pull back a little bit now and sort of talk about this second half of the year, because we both said, 5-3, we're pleased with that. It's a great place to be. You could make a very strong argument we should be 6-2, despite the erratic play that we've seen on the field. The Titans, I made the comment on Twitter, they're a hamstring away from being 6-2, and then our pal Superhorn said, or 2 questionable calls away from being 6-2. And it's true. We're right there, and I think you started the thread over on Titans Report. I can't remember if it was last week, but it was here recently about A, sort of how do people feel about the team making the playoffs, and then B, let's take it that next step. If they make it, can they make a run? Mm-hmm. And based on the play we've seen thus far, you'd say no. But based on the potential, and if they actually get it going, especially on offense, I think you would say yes. I think this is a team that's built to make a run. And
Right.
the most interesting thing maybe that people would have never predicted, even if we don't win this division, the AFC South very well could have 2 playoff teams. That's the way it looks right now. If the season ended today, Titans are the division champs and the Jags would be a wild card team, which no one would have predicted that a few weeks ago. I mean,
some Jags
remember
fans
us talking
maybe.
about remember us talking about how good the Raiders and Chiefs and Broncos all looked in those first couple games. It's like, oh man, they might get 3 playoff teams from that division. And now those things have kind of died down in the AFC South. Man, if Deshaun Watson doesn't go down, you're looking at 3 teams with the potential of having really good records. So how do you feel about the second half of the year? I mean, looking at the schedule, seeing what we've got ahead, we've got 2, I think, the Bengals game, it's a game you should win. They're not a good team this year. Then you got the game against the Steelers. So I made the comment on Titans Report, if we win this week, fingers crossed, if we get that 6th win, then all of a sudden you got the Steelers next week. You start looking at overall AFC playoff implications, and they're just 1 game ahead of us. So all of a sudden it goes from talk of can we make the playoffs to, guys, we might be able to get a bye in the playoffs.
That's always possible. I mean, so part of it is that this league is so week to week, and I think that that's an easy thing to say, but like, think about week 1. New Orleans played Minnesota. Sam Bradford looked like God, and New Orleans defense looked like trash. And since then, Sam Bradford died of AIDS, like knee AIDS, and New Orleans defense has stepped up, and they're a great team now. Like,
one of the best.
Can transition. And yeah, we have a thread over on TitansReport.com right now. I think Scotty started it where
he thinks
it's saying New Orleans is the best team right now. Things change quickly, but when I look through the schedule, Cincinnati, we should beat them. Pittsburgh, let's call it a toss-up. The Colts, we should beat them. The Texans without Watson, we should beat them. Out Carson Palmer, we should beat them. San Francisco is winless. We should beat them. And then you have the Rams and Jacksonville. Let's call both of those toss-ups. There are 3 toss-ups. No games where I'd say we definitely should lose. Like, the other team is just better. And then you've got 5 games that we should actively win. It won't work out that way. But, hey, that's double-digit wins.
Yeah.
If you just win the ones you should, and you lose Jacksonville, Rams, and Pittsburgh. So I honestly look at it and it's like, man, playoffs, I would be disappointed. And the sarcastic thing.
What was that? It cut out just a little bit there. You said if they don't make the playoffs.
If they don't make the playoffs, I'd be disappointed.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Not even just like looking at the schedule, but when you stop and think about it, Indianapolis without Andrew Luck.
Exactly.
And then Houston has lost like half of their starting lineup from week 1, plus Watson now. I mean, 2 teams have been removed. We should make the playoffs.
Yep.
It'll be an interesting year. I honestly think that there's a really good chance. I was thinking about it in the car and getting myself excited. I was like, man, we could really be peaking at the right time of the year. And the Super Bowl is rarely won by the best team from the regular season. It's the hottest team at that point. Like, teams peak at the right time. Baltimore, when they won the Super Bowl, they barely went into the playoffs. I mean, they had like some miracle run after the catch by Ray Rice to even make the playoffs. But they were hot at the right time. Marcus Mariota is entirely capable of getting super hot and playing a couple of awesome games. And, we get if we figure out the rushing attack, it just like this team could very well. There's nothing about them that says like, it doesn't matter if we make the playoffs. We suck. Like, you think the last 2 times, well, I guess maybe not last year as much, But like the year where we almost made the playoffs with Matt Hasselbeck, it was like, yeah, we could make the playoffs, but is this a team that you truly think could do something? Not really. I feel like this year, I mean, it would take gelling and some players stepping up and just continued gradually better performances over the course of the year. But the NFL as a whole, who is the team that is like a juggernaut right now?
Nobody. Yeah, I mean, they're NFC for sure. It's Eagles and Saints.
Well, but even then, like, yeah,
and maybe the Rams.
I don't feel like there are any complete teams who are like truly really good on both sides of the ball. There are teams that are pretty good on both sides of the ball. Just look at it and I'm like, man, they are just awesome.
Right.
They're unstoppable.
I agree.
Even like Kansas City early in the year, they looked unstoppable.
They did. Yeah.
They have not been playing well. It's an NFL year where I feel like you look at our division and it's decimated by injuries. You look at our schedule and it sets up really well. And then you look at the NFL as a whole and nobody is this team that, you know, if we had to play X team in the playoffs, we'd have no shot.
Oh yeah.
I don't see it.
I think we can beat anybody. And I just want to get this Bengals win, because if we get that Bengals win, then all of a sudden you can look at the Steelers and say, okay, this is a measuring stick game. How good are we in the AFC? Can we say, you know what, forget the division. Let's make a run at the number 1 overall seed. Let's make a run at number 2 overall seed and get a bye. Because I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. I love that we're flying under the radar right now, because everyone's talking about the Jags, because we're both 5-3. But when you look at the stats, I mean, the Jags are destroying us right now in the stats because their defense is so strong and their offense is playing really well. People look at the Titans and see, oh, they barely beat Cleveland. They barely beat Baltimore. They're getting these close wins. They got destroyed by the Texans, so that skews our point differential. There's been a lot of people throwing that around today, that they're minus 12 in point differential, but I mean, it's almost solely attributed to that Texans game and the fact that we've been having these very, very close wins. So yeah, if the Titans keep playing well, then that, I think you'll certainly see a big, but yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. You just really get the feeling that it's going to come down to that Week 17 game against the Jags for the division, because if the Titans have an easy schedule, the Jags schedule is like a cakewalk. I mean, it's ridiculous what they have down the stretch.
We get to
be
play
really
the Jags,
nice
but the Jags get to play us.
Yeah. It'd be really nice if the Jags would lose to the Chargers this week, because after that they have like a number of games against just teams that they should beat. And then I think the only other tough team on their schedule is Seattle, and then they have us to end the year. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of weird because the way the year is shaping up, if you look at it, the way the tiebreakers are probably going to fall, if the Titans are they could be actually a game behind Jacksonville going in, and still, if they win, they're fine, because then they would have the head-to-head. They would have beat Jacksonville twice. If they're tied with Jacksonville, they still would have to win, because because I mean, if they're tied in terms of record, Jacksonville beats them, then of course, and then even if they're ahead of Jacksonville by 1 game, somebody was already kind of looking at this because of the way division's shaking out. Yeah, because the Jags right now, they've only lost to us in the division. So after the whole head-to-head tiebreaker, it goes to division games. And so you would expect that the Jags are going to win the rest of their games in the division because of what's happened to the Colts and Texans. Chance at a loss would be against us. So even if the Titans are a game behind, tied with the Jags, or even a game ahead of the Jags, it looks like they would have to win that final game. So it's kind of a weird way that it's shaping up. But of course, I mean, if the Titans just get on a streak here, then, and I mean, the Jags are, I don't know if you saw that. It's not PFF, but 538 was doing an article. This was before the most recent game, but basically saying that the Jags are the most erratic team in the league. It was an article about how NFL games, everybody talks about how there's lots of randomness and parity, and then it was actually arguing the exact opposite, that teams, but Jacksonville was the exception because they've been so up and down. One week they beat the Steelers handily, then the next week they lose in overtime to the Jets. Then one week the Titans, we pretty much blew them off the field when we played head to head, and then they destroy a team the next week.
Baltimore.
Yeah, they destroyed Baltimore. So, I mean, they've been erratic. So I don't even know that you can say that they're going to run the table in all those games that they should win. And of course, the Titans probably won't either. But Scotty and I were saying last week, just looking at the next three, Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, we need to get at least two of those. So they got the first one. Now, if you get the win against the Bengals, then all of a sudden you're sitting in a pretty comfortable spot against Pittsburgh. And that one's going to be on a short week and away. So the Bengals game is by far the easier one to win.
Right. Well, and you were saying earlier, you hope we get this win because then the Pittsburgh game is more of a measuring stick. If we don't get this win, it's almost like Pittsburgh turns into a, wow, you really need to win that.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're 5-5 and you've only got 5 games left. You're probably going to lose one. Then you'd be 9-7. Like you start worrying a little bit after that. I think my math was off on that, but what?
Yeah. You're close
because 6 games left.
Have 6 losses. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, you really start getting nervous. If you can't beat the Bengals, that's really unfortunate because they've been really bad this year.
Yeah, let's talk about them real quick before we end the show. I know we kind of went a little bit out of order this week, but I think that's fine. Hopefully listeners enjoy it. But yeah, defensively, the Bengals are pretty good. I think they're ranked 6th in terms of yards per game. They're actually pretty good against the pass. So the Titans have faced some pretty good pass defenses as of late. I think the Bengals are top 5 in pass defense. Yeah, passing yards per game, they're number 5. So, I mean, the Ravens are actually number 3 and Steelers are number 2. Jags are number 1. So we have played the Jags, have played the Ravens, and we're about to play the Bengals and Steelers. So the passing game, gonna have to perform well. I mean, and it's against a good team. Rushing, they're not as great against the run. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, they're ranked 20th against the run, but the way we've been running, I don't think that's the Ravens are actually pretty bad against the run.
We did nothing
statistically, but
we didn't even talk about that. But what did we have? Like Derrick Henry had 8 rushes for 26 yards. DeMarco Murray 9 rushes for 19 yards. Yeah.
Adoree, though, 20-yard rushing average.
Give him all the carries.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how they work if they go to him more in the offense. But yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, though, the Bengals are just abysmal. I mean, they're bottom of the league. They're 32nd rushing, and then passing, they're not much better. Let's see. I think they were 28th passing. Titans are 27th. So, but yeah, they're pretty bad. Their points per game is not that great either. I mean, they're right down there they're 28th in points per game, tied with the Giants. 49ers average 15.9. The Browns average 14.9. So they do not have a good offense. And I don't know, man. I posted on the board this week. These things always have the potential to backfire when I say what I'm about to say. People say these things all the time and they backfire. But I feel like this might be the breakout week. I think the Titans, for the offense, because the defense has already been playing well. But I don't know. I feel one of those 3-4 touchdown games from Mariota. I think Davis finally gets in the end zone this week. It just feels like things are going to start clicking, and hopefully I'm right. I think they win this game, and hope they win it big. I think you kind of had this feeling against the Ravens,
I did,
and they won it. They won it, but
and it felt like we dominated them. But yeah, I just as I was looking at the matchup, I was like, we should it's not even like a toss-up game. We should beat the Ravens. And I could almost see it turning into a blowout. If the offense had managed more in the second half, it might have turned into a blowout, but that didn't happen. Yeah, I really think that this is one of those games that we have no business losing. And that's how we've been playing teams like that for a while now. And
yeah,
you can argue that they haven't been winning by as much as you would want, right? But they've been winning those games. They've been finding ways to win. I would expect that we're going to beat the Bengals. And yeah, I mean, we would have to have a bad game or the Bengals just like come out of nowhere and have a great game for us to lose this, because even the way we've been playing, we should beat them, right? There's no way to look at this game other than they would have to surprise to actually win this game.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Bengals, especially on defense, they're better than people think. They've got Dunlap up front, and Carl Lawson, the rookie, has been playing really well. But I think their strength of getting after the passer is kind of our strength. I mean, our offensive line, we kind of knocked them earlier for their rushing performance, but their pass performance has been as good as ever. I mean, they're still doing a great job in pass protection. Looking at the Bengals schedule, yeah, week 1, they just got destroyed by the Ravens 20-0, didn't score a single point. Then they lost to the Texans 13-9, so they only scored 9 points there. I think that was the first game for Watson. And then they lost the Packers by 3. They did beat the Browns.
They switched offensive coordinators coming into the Packers game, I think.
Going into the Browns or Packers game?
I think the Packers game was their new offensive coordinator.
Okay. And then so they won 2 games after they switched. Well, they lost the Packers, then they beat the Browns handily, then beat the Bills by 4, then lost to the Steelers 29-14, beat the Colts by a point, 24-23. And then just this most recent week, they lost to the Jags. Jags pretty much dominated that game, 23.
Jags walked on them. The interesting thing about the Jags is even without Leonard Fournette, they run the ball. They're really good at running the ball. Man,
Bortles might do enough for them to keep him for another year.
Their defense
starter.
That would be nice. Is almost historic levels of good, and as well as they run the ball, a very good blueprint. Like they line up well with a team like Baltimore when they won with Trent Dilfer or something, like a team that can just completely shut you down. They're just not quite as consistent.
Hopefully it's like that year when they were, I guess it was 99 when they were such a good team.
Yep.
And
they only lost to us.
Except us.
Because
I mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but I think Bortles had some big mistakes in the game against us, but still we move the ball on their defense like really no other team has. I mean, even the Rams, they played the Rams. Yeah.
And it started.
They played the Rams this year, and the Rams beat them, but the Rams didn't score a ton on the Jags, if I remember right.
Our game against them got started with the defense gave us a short field, and then we just started walking on them. Like we laid the beat down on them with the run game. It was impressive. I mean, there was the stuff with Henry trucking Ramsey, and I mean, it turned it. It almost seemed like they just gave up. But it got started with a lot of mistakes from Bortles.
Yeah, no other teams have. The Rams put up 27 on them, 1 by 10. We had 37 on them. So, yeah, no other teams came even close to how we did against them this year. All right, man, what are we forgetting here? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at Titans Report. Check out TitansReport.com.
How many moves do you have in Mario Odyssey? That's the question.
I don't know. Another friend was just asking me that before, and I was like, I actually can't remember how many I have because I've been taking my time with it. It's one of those games that doesn't really you don't really feel like forced to, oh man, I gotta get to the end of this. Although it's awesome. I've been playing with my son, loves to watch me play that one. Have you done the 2-player mode?
I haven't. We were gonna try that tonight. My son ended up sick, so he fell asleep real early. But he's been playing on the assisted mode, which is actually really nice. Because it'll give you blue arrows where to go. You get 6 hearts instead of 3, And if you just sit still for a little while, it'll give you your hearts back after you've been hit. So,
oh, cool.
And there's like almost no penalty for dying in that game. So it's nice. It's nice for little kids. But my one critique of the game is that a lot of stuff unlocks after you beat the main story for a given place. And so like I just spent we started late. So generally I always am late. Nothing new, but the reason tonight was I was playing Mario Odyssey and lost track of time, and then John texted me. But I spent like 40 minutes trying to find my way up to some area that I could see, and I couldn't find it. And I was just like, forget it, I'll do it later. I'm just going to beat this level. And then the very next thing after I beat it, they unlock a way up there. Why do you show it to me? Because, and the reason I don't like it is because that game is all about exploring. And so you're going to be prone to trying to find things, but then there's no way to do it yet. And so I kind of don't like that mix. But
sort of like the opposite of Zelda, where if you see it, it's like, oh, I can go there. I can figure out a way to get there.
So in terms of that debate, which of those two games do you think is better?
Oh, man. It's so
Wild or Odyssey? This is why people listen to the podcast, by the way.
I think I can hold off because I haven't seen enough of Odyssey yet. I think I'm on the last world, like, of the quote unquote main game before you get to all the extra stuff afterward. So I don't think I've seen enough of it yet. Right now, I think I would still say Zelda, but I mean, it's like you're arguing like about quality of steak, comparing it to different restaurants. So it's like they're both such good games.
Right. No, it's actually what I think of because they're both so great for what they are. It's really just like, what flavor of gum do you like?
Yeah.
Really comes down to preference. Do you want the kind of just the happy joy game? That's Mario Odyssey. Do you want, the other game is Zelda? I very much prefer Zelda. Other things with Odyssey, I think there's more variety in Odyssey too, where just like the different things you can do there's a lot more to it, whereas Zelda, it's almost like, different versions of the same puzzles. Even like when you're looking for the Karuk seeds, it's different versions of the same thing. There's only like 5 or 6 different things you can do, whereas in Zelda, I feel like in Mario, I feel like there's way more variety to how you find the moons. So that, I think, is a point.
And the hat mechanic is something I just never expected to work so well in a Mario game.
And it does.
Yeah, it's great.
It's shocking how often it because the fact that you can like bounce off of it, dive bomb towards it, do different things, like you can quote unquote break the game. That's one of my favorite things, is trying to figure out, like, can I figure out how to get out of this level? And then you're up somewhere where you're not supposed to be, and it's like black boxes. Have you done that yet?
No, but I was going to say there are some videos where there are people getting into like unreachable spots, but finding, well, apparently unreachable spots, but then there's actually coins there. So it's almost like Nintendo wanted you to, it's just like a little nod of saying, hey, cool, you found your way up here.
Yeah, I found one of those the other day, and I was like, hey, all right. Where it was like, I was just trying to climb up, bounce myself up off of a wall, and then throw my hat, and then bounce up. And I managed to get up there after 1 billion tries. And then there's a big pile of coins up there. I was like, hey, cool.
Nice. All right, you got me in the mood to go play.
I like that aspect. Yeah, I'm going to go back downstairs and play. So I'm sure everyone is very sad that we're going to stop talking about video games.
Yeah, there's several people who have commented on us. Our little, we've talked about video games briefly a few times. People have enjoyed it.
I was being sarcastic.
Hopefully next week we'll have Titans victory to talk about. But yeah, I think it sounds like you're predicting a win as well. A game we should win.
Yeah, it's a game we should win, and I think even with the disappointing performances at times, we're still playing better than them. Like, they are really a dumpster fire right now this year, and it's almost shocking. Like, they have 2 running backs who I don't think are bad, and then they draft another one who people expect to be good, and they can't run the ball with any of them. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
But thank
right,
goodness, because I want to win.
That's right. Thanks so much for all your support. If you want, you can check us out on iTunes and review us there. You can also find us on Stitcher, pretty much any podcast service. Podcast should be available there. And I think that's it. I already gave out the Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Titans Report. That Twitter, one more time, is just @Titans Report. The main website is titansreport.com. And we'll talk to you guys again very soon.